Welcome to the interview with the Gunmaker No.5. Today we're talking to the proprietor of Midlands Gun Services, Kristian Reilly, whose company is in Shrewsbury. Welcome, Kristian.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the invite.
Good to have you. We've talked to some interesting people and you are the next one in the hot seat. So you've got your own company now in Shrewsbury doing a range of gun making services, but you started in London. So just tell me a little bit about what you were like as a boy and how you became interested in guns.
From a very early age, it was fishing with Dad and my brother, and we did an awful lot of fishing. We used to, sort of ankle deep in the brook down at Ainsford and chasing chub around the river and things like that. And then that sort of over the years that progressed more into sort of specimen carp fishing. And then I started, my first gun was a gun that my uncle had given me. It was a BSA Meteor, and it had a bent barrel, I remember. So chasing animals around with that was not great. But yeah, I mean, that was the sort of my introduction into it. And then I sort of got into pigeon shooting with my uncle. We did an awful lot of decoying over, winter rape and stubble in the summer. And that's a very good schooling for learning how to shoot, in my opinion, because you see every type of bird. And from an early age, I was just obsessed with being out in the countryside and shooting, and that came with it. So it sort of turned from that into something else. And when I was at school, I was asked by somebody, or what would you rather do, a job that you enjoyed doing or one that paid you well that you didn't enjoy doing? And the choice was obvious to me. It was do a job that you love, and then you never feel like you're working, which I don't. I really enjoy whatever aspect of stock making or checkering or finishing, or I enjoy creating things, and if it's actioning, I enjoy that. Whatever part of it, I enjoy.
Back a little while so you I understand you first went to Holland Holland. How did that happen? How did you get your opportunity?
Well, I was sort of looking for something, a change. I'd worked at a tackle shop, quite a significant tackle shop down in the southeast, and whilst it ticked some of the boxes, it wasn't something that I could see myself doing long term. So I've always been fairly capable with making things. Set my mind to something, I can pretty much do most things. And I had spoken to a local college tutor in Bromley, Chris Buckingham, and said, "Look, I'm looking to do something. I'm capable." And he signed me into a course, a sort of entry-level engineering course, and he could see that I had a flair for it and was heavily interested in guns. So we made a few tools and a few different bits and bobs that were sort of showpieces that I could show to potential apprenticeships. And I wrote to Hollands, Purdy's, and a couple of the other gun makers at the time. It's 20 odd plus years ago now. So I wrote to them, and I got a response from Pete Boxall at Holland Holland, and he said, "Would you like to come along for an interview?" So I did, and very nervous going up to the well-famed Holland Holland on the train and tube, and I had an interview with Peter, and I was walking around in a factory that's hundreds of years old with a wealth of knowledge of something that it's a very intimidating place when you're going there as a potential craftsman, because you're nothing to the craftsman there. They don't know you from the next guy. You're not a customer. So when you go in there, you sort of do your pitch. This is what I'm passionate about, and I was encouraged to come and do some initial bench work to see if I had any manual aptitude, so to say, and I showed a bit of flair for it. I was given a bit of scrap steel off the bench and told to file it flat and square by the end of the day, which I did, and that was thrown on the bench, disregarded, and told to come back the next day, and I did that for 5 days. And each time I did it, I got quicker and the results got better, and after that I was encouraged to to start an apprenticeship, and which I did. And after that, I just flew. I really enjoyed it, and I worked with some really, really talented, knowledgeable people at Holland and Holland. That at that time there was a lot of craftsmen there. I mean, I think there was 14 actioners at the time, so a lot of people.
Were you apprenticed to one person in particular, or were you passed around the factory to different people to work with?
No, I was apprenticed in the action shop, but it was predominantly Steve Banks. I learnt a lot from Steve Banks, and it was mainly the jobs that they didn't want to do anymore. So, filing up cat boxes and rear sights and stuff like that was the first sort of stuff. And, they're actually, fairly tricky little jobs. And, while they only last sort of 3 hours to file up a rear sight, you learn a lot from it. And doing the cat boxes, you're learning lathe work and fitting and filing, and there's lots of work in that. So I sort of learnt a lot from Steve Banks, and some from the other craftsmen too. But it was mainly initially the jobs that no one really wanted to do was give to the apprentice and make him do them instead, like making all the tools for everybody.
Yeah,
making cutters, files.
Did you become an actioner by design, or was that just where they happened to have a vacancy when they brought you in?
Yeah, that's just where I think there was two minds put me as a stocker or as an actioner, and they just put me in the action shop, and that was that. I was put in the action shop, and I don't think you get too much of a choice. If you've only done woodwork, then the chances are that they'll put you in the stocking shop as a precursor. But it was predominantly because I'd done more metal work, I suppose, than I'd done woodwork, and was sort of put into the action shop.
Yeah.
But it was a really interesting place.
Yeah. How intimidating was it when you first started? What was your first day as an apprentice proper like?
You just no one talks to you initially, because I mean, at Holland's everybody works. I don't know so much now, but at the time everybody works with headphones on.
Okay.
Because the only one that was allowed a radio was the foreman. So everybody else had headphones, and you end up with no one's talking to you because they're just getting on with their work, and that you can't create conversation because they've got headphones on. So you're sort of looking to talk to people and engage in conversation, but some of the older guys like Avellino, Pinheiro, and Keith Pennell, and Richard Ruff, and there was the foreman at the time, charge hand, and Paul Faraway, and a few people come over and say hello, but you're there to just get on with it, and you're not. If you're talking to them, you're stopping them. So it's it's mainly just get on and do what you're supposed to do. And some people were warm and welcoming, but most weren't on the whole.
How long did it take you to become accepted and respected?
I think once you start doing gun work, I mean, you initially you're making tools and table vices and pin clamps and foot files and making cutters, and you're doing surface grinding hacksaw blades for slot saws, and you're doing the stuff for other people that they don't want to do because it's going to take them off of the bench. So you're doing that work. As soon as you start actually talking to the craftsmen and leaning on them a little bit to you tell me what's the best way of doing this, and they'll show you the best ways of doing stuff after a period of time. You learn the right way of doing it, and then you learn the quicker way of doing it. But after a while they warm to you, and it was. I wouldn't say it was frosty. It was just you're there to do a job and learn, and that's what you do. But as a young man, it's quite intimidating.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine. So you've worked with some real time served gun makers there. What sort of age were some of the older guys, and what sort of stories did they tell you about the old days when they were young men working with some of the real old timers?
Yeah, I mean, at that time when I joined it, there was a bit of a change of guard, because you had like Keith Pennell was foreman prior to my joining, and Avellino, Pinheiro, and Eduardo, and people like that. And you had Sean Hubble and Paul Faraway and Richard Ruff, and these guys were sort of, Paul Faraway and Richard Ruff had not long been foreman and charge hand. So the dynamic in the workshop, from what I understood, had changed. So whilst the older guys were taking more of a back seat, the younger foremen and charge hands were coming through, and yeah, the dynamic changed from what I understand. It's always been a very interesting place, and you hear lots of stories of initiations and all sorts of things that have happened over the years, but it was it's all second-hand information. So.
You managed to avoid one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean there was like the likes of Keith Pennell was a very interesting character. He came over, offered me a bit of advice, and Avellino, I think Avellino was there for a couple of years before he left, or just after I left. But I mean, these are very, very knowledgeable guys. And Eduardo and Avellino had come from Spain, and they'd been there for the best part of 35 years. So that factory was their home.
So primarily, while you were at Holland's, once you'd finished your apprenticeship, you went into the action shop, presumably, and you were actioning.
I started my apprenticeship in the action shop. I started it in the action shop and remained there the whole time. I didn't do a training school like they did used to, or I think they're starting to do again now. It was you got a bench in the action shop, and that's where you stayed.
Yeah. And so you were mostly actioning Holland Royals. Were you working on shotguns and rifles at the time?
Yeah, doing bits. I mean, they break it up slightly different at Holland. So you're not building a whole gun. You're doing a selection of jobs on different guns. So I might be doing lock work on a rifle or shotgun, or side-by-side shotgun, or over and under, and I might be doing that for quite a while. But I wouldn't do the start to finish. I do components of. So I might do lever work and ejector work or something. But you're never doing the whole thing.
Yeah.
They break it up a little bit, so everybody gets to do lots of different things, apart from fire-ups, which they like a couple of people to do, because you get the same style every time.
Yeah. Right. So, and how long were you at Holland's?
Just shy of 4 years, I think it was at Holland's. Yeah.
And after you left Holland's, is that when you set up your own business, or did you go and work for anybody else in the meantime?
No, I had a short break from the trade. I left to rejoin my family business, but it wasn't for me. And I decided after a period of time that I needed to go back to gun making, and I just decided to rejoin the trade. And I spoke to Pete Boxer, who was my previously production manager at Holland Holland, for a reference, and he offered me a job in Shrewsbury.
Right.
So yeah, I decided to come.
Edmiston, was it?
That's correct. Yeah. So I decided to pop up and have a chat with Pete and see what was going on there, and what he was doing sounded quite exciting. So I joined Boxall's for just over a year, 16 months, something like that. And then just decided that it was the sort of time of life when I really need to be doing something for myself. And then set up working from home. I built a log cabin in the garden and started working from home, out working for different people. And then decided that I can stay in my workshop at home for indefinitely if I need to. But expansion was something that I felt was better for me, because I've always been going to and from work, but never sort of working from home. And I found it difficult to work from home and retain the 9 to 5 mentality, because I can clock off if I need be, because I'm at home. But if I'm at work, I'll stay. Yeah. So then I set up Midlands Gun Services, and that was gun making for gun makers. And then we started doing a bit of stock making, stuff like that. And there was we never set up to do repair work and restoration and stuff. That just came to us. There's not too many in the area, as you know. You've got Mark Wallin at West Midlands Shooting Ground, who's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to any ejector work or lock work, any spring making, anything like that. And I still lean on Mark when it comes to stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, we found a really good premise in Battlefield in Shrewsbury, and we've got our own range there. I mean, when we first saw that unit, I thought, this is way too big for what I want. I mean, it's 2,500 square feet. I thought I only need a workshop. I don't need anything like that. But it was the facilities that it had there in the underground range, and full air conditioning systems, taking all the fumes out of the building and stuff like that. And I thought, well, this could work. So we built benches and what have you in there. And then shortly after that, I sort of looking for open niches in the market as to what was being done and not being done. And we was getting quite a lot of clay shooters asking for us to do alterations and stuff like that to competition guns. And I decided that a lot of people were going to Portugal and Italy to get stocks made for sort of Berettas, Blasers, Brownings, Barazzis, and Krieghoffs and the like. So I just thought that was odd. Why is everybody going abroad and to get it done? And the prices are very, very cheap getting it done in Portugal. You can get stock made in a couple of days. But I said, well, surely we can get somebody over from Italy to do the same thing in the UK. So I'd Luca working with me at the time, the engraver, and had a chat with him. And he said that he knew somebody that would have a chat and about coming over. And so he called Roberto, and Roberto was actually in a bar. And I thought, oh, this doesn't bode well. Early in the morning, he's in the bar. But he said, no, I'll come over. And 2 days later, he was here, and we were making stocks. And it's continued ever since. And we've built up.
It's become something of a speciality, hasn't it? So what sort of people are you making stocks for, and what's special about the service you're providing there now that people are coming to you for?
So we do a lot. I'd say 80% of it is for competition shooters. So we sponsor like world-renowned Ben Hurstwaite. We do a lot of sponsored shooters that are some aren't world champions. Ben is, but we sponsor Ben. Anything Ben wants, he gets done for free. He sends a lot of work to us, so his clientele comes to us for new stocks. We do people from all over the UK, Ireland, Scotland, Wales. We've had people come from all over Germany, Estonia, Georgia, Australia.
These are particularly competition shops, aren't they, who want special stocks for clay shooting competitions. So what sort of unusual fitments or differing from the norm kind of fittings are you doing for people that they're asking for at the moment?
I think that people that come to us don't tend to fit the Joe average size. So you've got really big chaps, big hands, tall, long, long length of pull, and they're not getting this sort of thing from a factory gun. We also do a lot of women as well, because the Joe average stocks aren't for Joe and average. You don't get something that's off the bat. I mean, lots of manufacturers like Zolli and Beretta and companies like that are all producing lady stocks, but that's a lady stock based on the average size lady, which is not always average.
Yeah.
So it's custom stocks with every dimension of it's custom, right down to grip size, palm swells, checkering patterns, any choice of wood. A lot of it's Monte Carlo stocks with parallel combs and lots of competition style guns. We're pushing more into the game side of things as well, because a lot of people shoot Barazzis and Krieghoffs and stuff on the driven line, but they're after a slightly different thing to the competition shooter. So we have to bear that in mind, and the style of the stocks is different. On a game gun, you don't put Monte Carlos, parallel combs, you're doing more pommel grips and stuff like that. So whilst we're looking for the benefits of a custom stock, we're also trying to work within the parameters of style. Yeah. We can do it on any gun really, anything. Caesar Guarini, Blaser, Beretta, Browning, Maruku, everything, and we've stocked about everything.
Yeah, and so that's running along very, very nicely. I've seen that develop over the last 2 or 3 years, and you seem to have really caught the market there. But in the meantime, while you've got the specialist stocking work going on, you're still essentially running an action shop next door to it with you standing there with a file. What sort of work do you do?
So I've worked for Purdy's in the meantime. So subsequently, Having worked for Purdy's, building the 12 bore over and under and 20 bore over and under. I haven't done any smaller calibers, but have done a number of actions for them, and that's building the gun right from component parts through to a finished gun, all by the ejector work. But yeah, that's been very interesting, because it's not Purdy way of doing things is slightly different to the way that I was taught to do things at Holland's, and they call it the Purdy way, and it's very different to the way the principles remain the same, but the fact that you're building the whole gun and filing it up and doing the lock work, lever work, ejector, you're doing everything. So you have to have a certain amount of knowledge to be able to do all of it. And yeah, it was an interesting learning curve. But there's quite a few craftsmen that have been very useful to lean on. Not so much from the factory, but outside of the factory, friends and stuff that have been very, very helpful and give you a guiding hand to help you with your interpretation of shape and stuff like that. Because when they're doing stuff in the factory at Purdy's, each gun looks ever so slightly different from the next craftsman's, because it's their spin on that gun. Whereas at Holland's, all the guns look the same because two people are filing them up.
Yeah.
So you're getting a lot more continuity, whereas from my interpretation of it at Purdy's, you're getting a little bit more craftsman individuality in the file up of each gun.
Yeah, and in terms of the work that you have to do on the various models that are produced by Holland's and Purdy's, is one easier or more difficult to make than another, or is it just a case of learning the new shapes and getting on with the job?
I wouldn't say one's more difficult than the other. I mean, you're going through the same processes. Doing the Purdy guns, you don't do the ejector work. That is something that's done by ejector men in-house, and that's a job in itself. So that's something you don't do. Whereas at Holland's, you would do all of the ejector work, cocking toggles and all that sort of ejector timing and push rods and trip rods and everything like that. You're doing that. You're taught to do all of that if you're doing ejector work. But it depends on really what you've done at Holland's or whether you've come from the Purdy stable, or because at Purdy's you're more apprenticed under somebody, so you'd be someone's boy. Yeah. Whereas at Holland's you float and you learn from different people. So you can weigh it as one bit than the other.
You've taken on a few people since you've been at Midlands Gun Services. Do you have an apprentice of your own at the moment?
We've tried a number, and that's something that we've been working towards getting, more to sort of ease the flow of guns through the workshop and bring somebody on who's younger and keen. We've tried a couple, more than a couple. We found it very difficult to get people that are as enthusiastic about the whole industry as we are, and I think it pays to have that enthusiasm. And we found one now. He's a lovely young lad, and hopefully he's going to be starting. He's due to be starting after the school period, the school holidays had finished. But obviously the coronavirus has mixed everything up at the minute. So he will be starting. He's a very keen lad. He's very capable. He's 16, so he's fresh out of school, and hopefully we'll teach him as much as he needs to know.
Yeah, what do you think are the barriers to success for somebody that's starting, wants to be a gun maker and wants to get started? Because the attrition rate for the number of people that start out and the number of people that actually go through the whole period and come out as good gun makers at the end of it is pretty brutal. Yeah,
I think it's perseverance. I mean, you have to be capable. I mean, some people don't have that manual dexterity needed in order to be able to work to that level. In any craftsman, there are some that are better than others, and there's some that are a lot better than me. And I mean, even the same in stocking or in finishing, everybody has their level, and some are better than others, and that's very true in every factory. They're all working to a standard which is achieved, but some find it easier than others. I think it's just perseverance and finding the right people to be under that are going to show you the right way of doing things, working in the London factories isn't easy now because it costs a lot of money to live there.
Yeah.
So inevitably you're travelling from outside of London, unless of course you're fortunate that parents live near the factories and what have you. But you know, travelling, I was travelling hour and 45 minutes, 2 hours to work and back every day. So that's a challenge in itself, which is why I only managed to do the time that I did, because it just got too much. But yeah, I mean, it's seeing enough of the same sort of work. In order to get good at something, you need to be doing and repeating the same jobs to learn the best ways of doing it and being shown the correct ways and actually trial and error yourself. Mm-hmm. So our apprentice will primarily go under Roberto because we're doing an awful lot of stocks. So his learning curve will be very good in the fact that he's seeing a lot of work being done. He's going to be stocking guns that aren't customer guns, but he's going to be doing that work himself, and he will learn very quickly if he's willing to and able to produce the goods.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting. I hope he works out for you, because it's a good thing that new people are coming on, and I'm talking to quite a few gun makers, and it does seem that they are again taking on apprentices, which is great news, really. But I mean, how confident are you in the future of the British gun trade going over the next 20 years? Where do you see things moving? How do you see the trade changing?
Well, I think the larger companies, you know, Purdy's and Hollands and Westleys and stuff, yeah, whilst they've got business to run, they're probably more duty bound to the trade than any craftsman like myself to bring apprentices in, because this is where everybody comes through. Mm-hmm. Yeah, people start at Westley's, or they might go to Purdy's or Hollands, and unless you've done your time at them companies, you don't know enough to leave. You know, you can't make this stuff up. It's not. There's gunsmithing and gun making, and they're two different things. And you know, unless you've served your time at them companies, unless the companies are offering apprenticeships to a substantial amount of people, so they cut the wheat from the chaff to get the decent people, then the trade will, you know, wither gently on the vine unless there's a significant amount of people put into the trade, and that needs to be continuous.
Yeah. What are your typical customers like, age-wise? The people that you see coming in asking for gun work.
I mean, on the competition side of things, we deal with, you know, cult shooters right the way through to, you know, senior shooters. So we deal with everybody.
The shooting seems to be quite robust and healthy. And how do you see things from a game shooting point of view? We've come under quite a lot of attack politically quite recently, haven't we?
Yeah, I think the game shooting over the past, you know, 10, 15 years has changed significantly to what it was. I mean, the bags have got increasingly bigger year on year, and the numbers seem to be rising, which, you know, may or may not be a good thing. It sells a lot of big days, but is that right for the sport? Probably not. I think the guns have had to change slightly to accommodate these high-driven birds. Whereas your smaller side-by-sides that weren't designed for shooting ever such long-distance birds, now the people are moving over to the over and unders because they're bigger, heavier guns where you can shoot big cartridges through. And that would be more so if this lead ban comes in and we're shooting steel. You know, big cartridges at big birds, and the guns have to change. The dynamic of the gun has to change because it can't stay as the same as it was.
Yeah, it's interesting how the fashions for shooting and the requirements that people look for in a game gun change with the times. I wonder whether or not we'll see a little bit of a backlash and people moving to smaller days and more traditional covert shooting rather than just trying to get the birds further and further away. But
I hope so. Yeah, because it'd be good for the sport. I mean, we need to be self-policing a lot of this, and I shoot game myself, and I love the challenge of shooting. You know, a big day, I get invited by customers, which is very generous of them, on some nice days, and I enjoy the shooting. It's to be doing it consistently big days and shooting, 1,000 bird days, for me is too much. But and that's on my personal opinion. But you can still have as much fun shooting 250 birds as you can as 1,000. But it's just the numbers significantly different.
Yeah. And what do you shoot with yourself when you are invited to go shooting?
Well, I shoot with depending on what the day is and what sort of distances I'm going to be shooting at. But the gun that my gun of choice is obviously a custom stock for me. Is a Keyman. It's a Spanish over and under, very similar to a Barazzi. It's 32-inch multi-choke. I can put big cartridges down it, long distance stuff. Or if I'm doing a sort of smaller farm shoot, walked up day, I've got a 28-inch Maruku. I can shoot steel through that. I can shoot ducks with it. I can shoot closer up birds. Something that's a bit less heavy to carry throughout the course of the day. So it depends really on what I'm shooting or what type of day it is.
Yeah. And do you have any plans for future projects that you're happy to talk about at this point? What's next for Midlands Gun Services?
Yeah, I mean, we're always looking forward. We want to be doing progressively different things. We started recently a project called Bespoke Chokes, and that's in custom engraved chokes, so laser engraved chokes to suit the patterns of the guns. That's been popular. It's something we've not pushed. Perhaps we should push it more. It's very popular. We've sold them in about 8 different countries so far. Mm-hmm. So it's a very interesting project, and it's something that people can buy for wives can buy for their husbands that they wouldn't want to buy for themselves. So that's a very unique thing. No one's really done that before. So that was something that we set up with a friend of mine, and that's really taken off. It's very popular.
Right. And what do you like doing outside of work and outside of the gunsmithing world? Do you have non-gunsmithing hobbies, or are you totally wrapped up in the world of work and shooting?
Yeah, it's very difficult to not eat, sleep, and drink shooting when you're doing it all day and it's your hobby as well. I probably shoot less now as a clay shooter or game shooter than I did before I was gun making, to be fair. So I do love it. I enjoy shooting, and if ever I've got an hour or two spare, then I'll have a walk out with the gun and dogs. So I've got 5 spaniels and a Labrador, so I need to be getting out. I'll go beating, picking up at the local estate, Sundawn. We're doing a lot of bushcraft recently with my son. Yeah. That's quite good. That's a customer of mine's got a lovely wood locally that we do some bushcraft with. So we've made our own camps, and we cook. We went the other day, a fortnight ago, and we were shooting pigeons around our camp. And as they were landing, we were plucking and dressing and putting them on the spit to eat. So
fantastic, great memories for a boy.
Absolutely, yeah, great fun. I mean, plucking the feathers out of a dead bird is great fun for a young lad of 10.
Yeah, you'll remember that forever.
Yeah, we do a lot of fishing and canoeing and stuff like that. So it all tends to be based on being outside.
So, talking to your London gun making compatriots, you would recommend life outside of the capital?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it's a totally different pace of life. I mean, having lived down south and for many, many years and worked in and around London for my whole adult life, it's being outside of London, the pace of life is very, very different. And Shropshire, as you know, because you're from Shropshire, is a fabulous county that we try and keep a secret as best as possible.
Yeah.
But it's a nice place to live. People are very warm and welcoming, and there's great shooting available in the county and fishing, and there's so much that this place has got to offer. It's a really enjoyable place to live.
Yeah, and I think some of our overseas viewers perhaps don't realise that we've got quite a lot of independent London-trained gun makers like yourself running their own businesses all over the country. London and Birmingham obviously get the most of the attention because they are the traditional gun making centres, but there are significant numbers of you guys now working out probably quite close to most people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got as far north as Pembrokeshire in Scotland, and you've got Luke Bromley all the way up in north of Scotland, and Mark Mitchell, and you've got Mick Kelly in Kent, and you've got Pete Higgins down in Devon, and it's quite sporadic. And if you've got the right workshop and the ability, then you can work pretty much anywhere. You don't need to be in one of the London factories to carry out that work.
Yeah, and of course that creates a real network of expertise and gun making skills around the country. And I guess you guys all network quite closely and send work from one to another, and work almost like a virtual factory, but that's spread all over the country.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's Mark Mitchell is a good friend of mine, and if ever there's a question, I'll lean on Mark. He's a font of knowledge, of which I don't know anyone that knows more about that sort of thing than Mark. And any barrel work questions, I'll give Pete a ring, and there's Matt White and people like that. Any questions you've got about finishing, case hardening, anything like that, and people all tend to sort of bounce off each other, and you can get something really exciting made just amongst your friends.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been down that road myself and come up with one or two, really special guns that have been built by different specialists from different parts of the country, really doing what they're best at, and you can really produce some fantastic, interesting guns, which are not quite like anything that comes out of a factory.
Exactly. I mean, the toughest part about doing something like that is, as you probably will remember, is the project managing of it. I mean, I can do my bit. I'm happy to do my bit, 7 days a week. But when I've got to schedule with other people, and I've got to build a gun within a certain time, I haven't got, one of each craftsman in my workshop at any one time. So I can't just get the gun built in 6 months. I need, an extended period of time in order to get things done. I think that often surprises people when you say it's going to take 2 years to make.
Yeah.
Why the hell does it take that long? And because you're working to your schedule, plus possible 8 or 9 different disciplines that it takes to actually make a gun.
Yeah, there's a lot more involved than people realise. Now you've got boys. Would you recommend to either of them that they follow you into the gun trade if they were interested, or would you like to see them do something else?
Well, Harrison has registered an interest in doing something like that. I mean, he's a very bright boy, and if he decides to follow me into it, I'll encourage it. I'll support his every decision, whatever he wants to do, providing it's not in hair and beauty. If he wants to do something creative, if he wants to do and if he wants to come into gun making, then great. I'll show him what he needs to know. But if he wants to be a scientist or whatever he wants to be, I'll support him in doing that. But yeah.
Well, that's been fantastic talking to you, Kristian. Thank you for taking some time out of your valuable family time at home.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And I wish you well with Midlands Gun Services, and I'll come up and visit you again soon. But if anybody's watching and you are in the Shropshire area, Midlands Gun Services in Shrewsbury, you do take work from the public, don't you? You're not exclusively working for the trade anymore.
No. So I'd say nowadays it's primarily walk-in customers, a lot of restoration, repair, alterations. New gun work is there, of course, but it's a good percentage of it is walk-in customers, which it was never set up to do. It's just the way it's changed. But
it's funny how business takes its own course, isn't it? Well, absolutely. I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to go and take care of the barbecue that's rapidly going out. And we'll catch up very soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Dick. Take care.
Bye.